Welcome to Women Don't Do That, where we empower you with inspiration, knowledge, and skills to redefine your boundaries and unleash your potential. I'm Stephanie Mitton, founder and CEO of Beacon North Strategies and your guide. Small town girl turned CEO while navigating career, motherhood, ADHD, and chronic migraines. Our conversations range from interviews with visionary women to solo episodes filled with actionable insights. We are your hub for turning what ifs into let's go. Are you ready to redefine your possible? Let's get started. Today on Women Don't Do That, I'm really excited to be talking to Shahd Alasaly, a sociologist and founder of Blue Meets Blue, which is a humanitarian fashion brand that employs refugee artisans and honors Syrian craft. We talk about belonging, resilience, and starting again. If you're curious about other cultures, building a business with purpose, and wearing beautiful pieces that help women rebuild, this episode will meet you there. Take a listen. Shahd, welcome to Women Don't Do That.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you for being with us today. We like to get to know people a little bit better. So can you talk to me about what does life look like for you right now?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say it's really full right now, but very fulfilling. I am currently balancing motherhood and also teaching social psychology and sociology at the university. In addition to hosting a TEDx event in Tampa, which I'm really excited about in March, but I didn't realize that that is going to be taking up the majority of my life. And then finally, the relaunch of Blue Meets Blue, which is a clothing line that employs refugees in the US. So full and fulfilling, but very exciting.
Yes. How old are your kids?
Ooh, I have two. I have a middle schooler, I have a high schooler, and I have a kindergartner.
Okay.
So 5, 12 and 14. I don't know why every single year I have to like do the math work. But
Yes.
I just can't keep track anymore.
Well, there's a lot going on. My
There's
kids
a
are 12 and 14, so
Oh, very cool. Boy and
yes.
girl?
Two girls.
Oh, nice. That's lovely.
Yes. Yeah, I'm really there's obviously challenges in the teenage years, but I'm also really enjoying it at the same time.
Yes. Are your daughters friends?
Depends on the day.
Yes. Okay. Very cool.
That's a diplomatic answer.
Yes. That's,
Another question we like
that's
to ask people to get to know them better is what motivates you to live your best life?
I think probably the idea of a legacy for my kids, specifically the belief that our work should not just elevate ourselves, but
Mm,
really lift other people as well.
right.
So I hope that everything that I'm doing models that for them. I think specifically for me, I come from a community and a country that has witnessed a lot of suffering and a lot of loss. And then historically has been colonized and everything. So I've witnessed that in the people. I've witnessed that in the strength of the people that have come to the United States as refugees who have lost everything. And then I've
Mhm.
witnessed it in their resilience, and it pushes them to live with purpose, essentially. And so for
Mm,
me, I see that I'm inspired by it. I've obviously, grown up to some extent, seeing a lot of neighboring countries as
mm,
well, even though I grew up in America, but I'm also Syrian, that have suffered so much at the hands of that kind of, whether it's historical colonization or the ongoing wars and et cetera. So a lot of it for me is leaving this legacy for my children to see what they can do to find
mhm.
purpose and compassion, not just a spoken compassion, but a very lived one.
I think that's really important and very powerful, and we'll unpack some of that a little bit more as we chat. Can you talk about your experience and you talk about Syria and coming to the US and some of the challenges and things that you worked through and how that leads to some of the things that you're working on today. So can you talk about some of those kind of milestones?
Yeah, so I grew up actually in Arizona, but I used to
Ah,
spend
okay.
yeah, but I spent every summer going to Syria because my grandparents and extended family were all there.
Mm.
And so it was this space of culture and community and language and heritage and all the amazing things. I also was surrounded by things like textiles and fabrics because the fabric industry is one of the largest industries in Syria. So my
Okay.
grandmother, from a very early age, I remember growing up and watching her in the summer, taking pride in the clothing that she would make from scratch and took pride in the fact that she never let her children wear store-bought clothes, that she always made everything. And so I grew up with that. And I think that's something that Syrians, especially Syrian women, are like appalled if you do not know how to sew a button or alter your own clothing. Like it's just very much a part of, the what they learn. So, yeah, I grew up every summer going to Syria and spending time over there. And so when the civil war happened in 2011, there was this disconnection where we were no longer able to go back. The
Mm.
people of the country were protesting. They wanted freedom, they wanted democracy. And then there were very severe crackdowns by the oppressive regime at the time, the Assad regime. And so we weren't able to go back for over a decade. So my children no longer were not able to have the same experience that I had. I wasn't able to take them back in the summer. And I was disconnected from a lot of extended family. A lot of people passed away during the time, and it was really, really sad to not be able to have that
Mm-hmm.
anymore. And so fast forward to 2013 or 2015, sorry, I launched Blue Meets Blue, which was this clothing line that employed refugees in the US. The goal being, I was in psychology at the time and I wanted something that was a little bit like art therapy. So, a way to connect fashion with healing, to create
Right.
jobs with dignity, and to preserve this culture that the war had tried to erase. Blue Meets Blue, the name of the company, came from this idea of every time I would try to think of a name, I had this image that kept coming to mind, and obviously every refugee takes a very different journey, but people on a boat, and the only thing they could see was the blue of the sea meeting the blue of the sky. And
Mm.
so for me, that symbolized a journey to hope, a journey to freedom. And so later on, my academic path in sociology really deepened this vision, and it gave me the tools to name what I had been witnessing, what I had been experiencing, what I had been trying to do with my company, which is this study of trauma and resilience, right? How do you collectively heal from collective trauma?
Mm.
And so that's again, fast forward to 2019, we had to stop Blue Meets Blue because I was moving. And then COVID hit, and that was not a good time to get together with people. And then this past year, Syria became free, which was really exciting. A lot of Syrians did not think they would ever see that in their lifetime. And so I was inspired to start it again. And I had finally gone back to Syria this past summer, and I was able to connect with a bunch of the factories over there, the ones that were remaining, right? Because 80 to 90% got destroyed. And I was able to meet the last brocade maker in Syria. And it was a really special time. So I sourced the material from there with the goal of reviving or helping be, a cog in the machine, if you will, to revive the industry over there while employing the refugees here in Florida to make the clothing.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
And so you're hoping to also like support that industry and
mhm.
bring back some of that culture that was so important as well.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Okay. You mentioned about the trauma piece, and I know that's an area of expertise for you and important given the work that you're doing. Can you unpack that, the details of the collective versus individual trauma and how that plays into the story for you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good question. So with individual trauma, we're looking at how trauma impacts the mind, the body, right, on an individual level. Biology, all of these really important things to see how someone experiences a trauma. And what we know about trauma is that everybody can experience it in a different way, right? Some
Mm.
people, it might not leave any lasting impression. It might just be something that, two people can experience the same car crash, but come out very differently. And so what is said is that the trauma is what happens within your body as as a response to that trauma,
Mm.
right? That traumatic incident. And so how your body reacts to it's really important. Whereas with collective trauma, we're talking about something a whole group of people experience. So war, genocide, colonization, all of these really collective experiences that change the culture, that change the narrative, that then become a part of that history and a part of that collective memory, right? So you look at things like museums that happen as a result of a certain trauma that, has collectively been experienced to memorialize a certain experience and to remember, because a lot of trauma healing studies talk about how important it is to be seen, to be validated, and to have that trauma essentially for people to bear witness to that trauma, right? Because it becomes this validating reinforcement. Yes, you did go through that. Yes, that was awful. Yes, we agree with you, right? To
Mm.
some extent. And so that is, in a nutshell, that is a little bit of the summary.
Hmm. And how does that weave back into the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, so also with trauma studies, part of the healing people will tell you that's really important is for you to do something somatic with your body. So sometimes
Mm.
it's dance, sometimes you have drumming circles. Different cultures respond to trauma in different ways, and a lot of the
Hmm.
healing comes from connecting mind to body and movement. And so for
Mm.
me, it was kind of how can we bring this fashion? Because a lot of times the women would be working together and we collectively work together. I focus on
Right.
that collective element. A lot of these women have been through similar experiences. So when they're sitting together and they're sewing, one, they're connecting that movement. And they're also having really difficult conversations in a safe space. And so it's a very layered type of and again, I don't call it healing because it's not a formal healing space, but there is a healing element that comes from being able to share your experience with people that understand what you've been through.
Yes.
And it's not this formal therapy session, right? Where it's just talk therapy. You're talking to people who understand you, who have a holding space for you. You feel like you're held.
Yes.
People who understand what you've been through, essentially speak the same language, have a similar experience. And you're also using your skill set, because a lot of these women, this was their skill set they used to sew before. So now they also
Right.
feel confident in what they're doing, and they are creating this artistic expression while
Mm.
they are connecting all of these elements together. So it's really powerful and very special.
Right. And so there's this healing element for people creating the pieces uh, that's weaved into also having like making a job and an economy and being able to pay for things and stuff as
Mhm.
well.
Correct.
Hmm. You talk a lot also about humanitarianism, and some people listening might not know what that is. So can you maybe start by explaining for folks what that is?
Absolutely. So humanitarianism is a very simple concept that essentially, it's a big word, right? But it essentially means to be able to empathize enough and put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Okay. And so when you are being a humanitarian, you're constantly putting yourself in these positions to think, what is something that this person would want? If I was in this person's shoes, what is something that they want? So, uh, not having to make it be this big idea, something as simple as, okay, if you're on a traffic stop and you see a houseless person and you think to yourself, what is something that would make me feel a little bit more comfortable in my day? And so you decide to make blessing bags, right? And a blessing bag could have essential items like a toothbrush and toothpaste and hand sanitizer and a granola bar and a water bottle, right? Like thinking about the little things that can make somebody else's day a little bit easier. I have
Mhm.
this book that I wrote for children, a kid's book about humanitarianism. And it teaches these simple concepts of empathy and humanitarianism
Mm.
on and I focus on the fact that you don't have to be an adult to be a humanitarian. You don't have to engage in these really important medical missions around the world to be a humanitarian. You don't have to be, somebody with this degree to be a human. Anybody can be a humanitarian. Standing up against a bully at school, you can be a humanitarian. Smiling to someone who has been, going through something or is having a bad day. Like there's so many different ways, and the idea is to think about what you can do to make somebody else's day a little bit easier and to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and a way of doing good in the world.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think that work is so important and needed more now than ever, given, some of the challenges we're seeing in the world, where attitudes are taking us in terms of between other people and knowing you live in the States, also just, I mean, I live in Canada, so I'm getting things through, certain lenses, but in terms of even how immigrants are treated in society, and some of that is spreading, and so it's a really important message.
Yeah. And the book too, I said it's a kid's book about humanitarianism. It's part of a bigger project. I don't know if you've heard of the company A Kid's Book About. But it was started by Jelani Memory as a response to the George Floyd murder. And his first book was a
Mm.
kid's book about racism. And then he just partnered with a bunch of people that wrote about their specific industry and the things that they do. And like you said, at some level, it's so important to have these conversations with kids early on because they grow up internalizing it. I think if
Mhm.
you're just starting to learn about empathy as an adult, I mean, it's never too late, but it does become more internalized if it's a conversation that you're having and really internalizing from an early age. And I think too, for kids, it's very natural. It's very natural for them
Mhm.
to be empathetic. They don't
Yes.
grow up, racist or mean or unempathetic. It's layering, right? It's adults generally feel the layers with politics and news and hatred as they get older. But when they're younger, if they see somebody who's crying, it's natural for them to go give that person a hug, another kid in the class, and like ask if they're okay. And it just comes a lot more naturally to kids. So I think it's really important that we have these conversations early on, model the behavior and discuss it and internalize it and look for opportunities to be humanitarians.
Yeah, it's so important. I feel like that too with the work that I do at Women Don't Do That, and just some of the challenges that we've seen and the backpedaling on, the value that women bring to society, whether that's at work or at home. And I've been doing it now for 7 years, and in some ways it feels like that work is more important today than it's ever been. And so it's an important time to be, going back to some of these basic concepts like equality and human rights and humanitarianism and caring for others. And, that's an important role, like just the basics of being a human.
100%.
Hmm. Can you talk about, for Blue Meets Blue, can you tell us more about it? Are you selling things right now?
Yeah, so we just relaunched our website this past week. We just did our official launch yesterday
Oh,
in Florida.
congratulations.
Thank you so much. And yeah, on Instagram at Blue Meets Blue, and then online, bluemeetsblue.com. Our new collection is available. What's beautiful about the collection is that now, like I said, the fabric has been sourced from Syria. It's a brocade fabric, which Syria is known for. And
Can I pause you there? Some people may not know what does that mean, a brocade fabric?
it's 100% silk.
Okay.
The fabric itself is 100% silk. So the clutches that you see online, those are made in the factories of Syria that I'm trying to help revive. The clutches that are in wood are made from locally sourced cherry trees that are outside the Damascus suburbs. Damascus is
Mm.
the capital of Syria. And then the clothing is going to be made out of this brocade mix fabric that's coming also from Syria. But what's amazing is when you place an order specifically for the clothing, it's made to order for you because we're a slow fashion company, so we don't house inventory. So right now it's just fabric on a bolt. But when you make the order, you're automatically giving one of the refugee artisans a job and
Mm.
you get to send in your measurements and it's made to fit you. So it's
Wow.
small, medium, or large. It's a your waist size and the height you want it based on the heels you want to wear or not wear. So it's a very special experience. It's slow fashion. Everything we do is intentional and with a purpose. We try to reduce waste. It's not just about sustainability for the environment, but it's also sustainability for the people that are working with us.
Yeah, that's such an important message. I feel like there's so many people that appreciate buying products like that support these kinds of missions because you're getting beautiful things, but you also know, like you said, you're helping people and getting beautiful products at the same time.
Yeah.
It's really important. When we look at refugee narratives right now, what do people get wrong about refugees or about forced migration?
I think right now the political discourse is really heavy.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, I don't think people that are disconnected from the topic understand how the implications of everything that's happening politically. So because I am connected with I serve on the board of a local resettlement agency here in Florida, and we were helping refugees resettle into their new homes. Refugees are some of the most vetted people that come into the country. They go through rounds and rounds and rounds of interviews. And I think what people, again, losing their humanitarianism and their empathy, do not realize that these people are running away from violence,
Hmm.
want
Hmm.
safety for themselves and for their children. And every refugee that I have ever interviewed or talked with, their number one hope is no longer for themselves, but it's for their children to have a better
Hmm.
life.
Right.
And so I think as a parent, we can all appreciate, for parents, they can appreciate that. And then for just human beings, we can also appreciate the fact that a lot of these people lost their homes. They don't have something to
Hmm.
return to. Their homes were bombed, and they have to pay back their ticket within 6 months of arrival. So they are not living on our tax dollars. They are not and so there's a lot of stereotypes and misconceptions, unfortunately. And right
Hmm.
now, with the current administration, their SNAP benefits have also been cut, and a lot of their funding has been cut.
Hmm.
And a lot of refugees that had been approved to come to the country and have been waiting in limbo for months and years were told that they are no longer allowed to come, and we closed our
Hmm.
doors back in February. And so I guess the message for everyone is I hope people can tap into their humanity and their
Hmm.
empathy and their kindness and understand that we all share this planet together.
Hmm.
And if we had to leave this country and seek refuge in another country, I don't think we'd want other countries to close their doors on us and tell us that we don't, matter and our
Yeah.
narratives are not important and our trauma is not seen.
Yes.
But that's one of the misconceptions is that refugees live off of our tax dollars and that they are, dangerous and all of these awful, awful narratives that could not be further from the truth.
Thank you for sharing that. Even in Canada, the immigration consensus is waning. And so I think those are important messages, right? And the world is really challenging, and there's so many needs in countries. And at the same time, that humanitarian piece always has a place, and there is a value add. We know that immigrants are and refugees are so much better at entrepreneurship and starting businesses. And, if people go and look at some of the statistics, these are some of the people that are driving our economies. And certainly
Oh,
for a country like Canada, like our population is really small. And some of the goals that we have for the future, we can't do it with the population size that we have. And so, there's not just the humanitarian argument, but there's other reasons why this is important as well. And I appreciate you bringing back in also just bringing it down to the basics of the humanity piece.
yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Actually, I had a TED Talk back in 2018.
Hmm.
It was called, my gosh, my brain's blanking, but it was essentially about the case for hiring refugees. And
Right.
that's what it was about. It was about the fact that they drive our economy. Statistics show this. And so, unfortunately, with all the fear mongering and things that we hear on the news, it's just simply not true.
Hmm.
They not only take a lot of, are willing to do jobs that other people are not willing to
Hmm.
do,
Yeah.
they also are some of the most brilliant entrepreneurs. The amount of restaurants and businesses and businesses that they have opened that they have then hired people
Hmm.
locally has just been, it's been amazing.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you bringing that up. That is absolutely true.
Hmm. Thank you for talking more about that. Yeah, it's a challenging place in the world these days for sure, which maybe brings me to one of my final questions is how do you balance, you're doing all of this really important work, but there's also like a lot of emotional weight
Mhm.
as well, right? And how do you balance that where you don't get stuck or in the sadness and the difficulty?
Yeah, I mean, some days are heavier than others for sure, especially because my background is I'm American, but I'm also Syrian. And so I see,
Hmm.
it's a balance, and my whole life's been a balancing act. But, I straddle the line of two different cultures and two different languages and two very different experiences.
Hmm.
And then also the balancing act of being a mother, an academic, a creative entrepreneur. The lines blur. And I think
Hmm.
what helps me is leaning into community and not leaning away, whether it's with family or friends or even the artisans and the refugees that I work with. I think what I've learned this past probably 2 years is that I've been giving myself more permission to
Hmm.
not have to balance in the traditional sense, right? So
Right.
there are these seasons of intensity and then there's seasons of rest, and I've been leaning into whatever life throws my way,
Mhm.
and I try to honor
Yes.
it as it comes,
Yes.
and to remember that the work that I'm doing is not separate from my life. It is part of my purpose. And I think that that
Hmm.
has helped me feel like it doesn't have to be so much of a balancing act. So some days my kids are helping me, carry boxes and with all my crazy events and everything that I pull everyone into. And I'm a mom and an entrepreneur at the same time, and I'm also passing lessons on to them. And it's all one blurred line. So it's different every day.
Yes. I think that will be very relatable to the listeners. We'll make sure to include the information on Blue Meets Blue in the show notes so people can find it and hopefully they will check it out. We're going to jump into the rapid fire, but is there anything you wanted to add before we do that?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. So one of the things that is really important to me is that women come away from our conversations with actionable things. So what is one actionable step you can leave with listeners today?
I would say to do at least one thing this week that supports someone else's dignity. So whether that is checking in on a friend that might be struggling, or looking up on Google a local refugee resettlement agency and seeing how you can potentially volunteer, teach English. I think it's really important to remember that a lot of small acts that we do consistently change communities so much more than just like one big gesture. And so trying to find something that you are able to, again, support someone else's dignity, but in a way that's more consistent throughout your life.
Hmm. I think that's a great one to leave people with. Can you share a rule that you broke that turned out to be a great decision?
Yeah, I stopped waiting for permission. I stopped
Mm.
waiting for people, or maybe I stopped waiting for more of a traditional timeline or like a traditional path. So I don't have a background in fashion, but I started a clothing line, right? I think stepping out of this boxed mindset
Mm.
that generally does not allow you to be creative or launch projects that you're really passionate about. I really love that I got to do Blue Meets Blue. And I really love the fact that I get to organize a TEDx event here. And waiting until you're ready or waiting until you feel like you have the credentials, I think that that is one of the things that keeps us stuck.
Yes.
And so breaking, I guess, the rule of waiting and giving,
Yes.
and waiting for permission has opened so many doors, meaningful doors in my life that I would not have had if I was just waiting for that.
I would thoroughly support that. Who is a woman who continually inspires you?
I mean, that sounds cliche, but my mom. She's navigated a lot of challenges in life with a lot of grace, and she is continuously a very giving person and a
Mm.
giving, like, she's just very generous with her time and everything that she does. And so she's turned a lot of difficult life experiences into purpose. And so
Mm,
watching her navigate that has taught me how to handle a lot of really difficult moments with grace.
that sounds very empowering. What is one book that has significantly impacted your wisdom or perspective?
I have to say The Body Keeps the Score by Kolk.
Mm,
My work is in trauma. Everything that I do is in trauma. And so I really loved the perspective that he shared that the pain that lives in the body. I think I read it early on as I was starting my work
mhm.
on trauma and healing and identity. And I think he shaped a lot of how I approached my dissertation. And then also how communities can support one another in recovery was really important. So it shaped a lot of my research and it shapes what I give my students. So
Right. Well,
I'm
that one is on my reading list, so I'm happy to know
gonna
that
have to
that
circle
comes.
back and tell me what you thought.
Yes, recommended. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today
So
and sharing
welcome.
that important work. I hope people feel inspired to not only support what you're doing, but also to integrate some of what you've shared into their everyday life. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us on Women Don't Do That. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating or review. Connect with us on Instagram at Women Don't Do That and visit our website www.womendon'tdothat.com for more details. Join our Patreon to support our work. Find all of the links in the show notes. Remember, you have the power to transform your what ifs into let's go. Together, let's redefine your possible. Until next time. The opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Women Don't Do That, Stephanie Mitton, or affiliated brands.